Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to the PDX Black Rose podcast, back for another episode. Today we have Kenyatta Trice, who's the owner of a consulting firm called TRICE Occupational Consulting Solutions, LLC. Man, like she's out there doing the thing. I kid you not. When it comes to equity and access for Black and brown people trying to get into employment, especially during COVID times. You know, Kenyatta has been doing the work for the past 12 years. She's on the streets. She's out there grinding, trying to make opportunities for us a whole lot better. She's our advocate. And from this conversation, we just get to learn a lot more about her roots to Portland. Not only that, but just the work that she's doing in the community to help us make ends meet and also have us have a stake in the community that we're operating and living in. And so she's an entrepreneur. She's just doing the thing, right? And so just check out the conversation and be sure to hit her up if you need some stuff, because I think with this, the beauty of this podcast is, you know, this is for Black Portland, and this is for Black Portland to share the stories of the people in the community that are doing great things. And so hopefully by the end of this, we have a collection of people that we could tap in as resources. If you don't know about Good People PDX, you know, definitely this is an extension of that. Not officially, but you know what I mean, right? Like it's all about community. And for me, if you guys didn't realize, I just got into medical school. So that's great. And so hopefully I continue to work on this project and provide a resource for those that are out there. But more importantly, you know, it's about pushing the envelope forward. And so hopefully if you've all listened to the series so far, hopefully it empowers you to go out into the world and have an impact, like many of the guests on the podcast have been. And hopefully you'll be on the podcast. And so without further ado, let's get the podcast started. I wanted to take a break from the episode to let you know that we have some merch that is available. Over at Iltopia Studios, you can find the Black Superheroes Matter art book, which is a collection of illustrations that reimagine your favorite superheroes through the eyes of children of color. We also have a bunch of sticker packs, over 120 different sticker designs of your favorite superheroes. More importantly, we have our Color Me Super coloring book series. Definitely check out the merch at shop.iltopia.com or blacksuperheroesmatter.com. And now back to the episode. You know, welcome to the PDX Black Rose podcast with your host, Stephen Christian. And today we have Kenyatta Trice with TRICE OCS Consulting. And yeah, you know, like, thanks for, you know, agreeing to be on the podcast. How's everything feeling for you?
Thank you for having me. Everything's cool. I'm cool. That's like a super general. Yeah, but everything's fine. Work has been busy. A lot of it is because of the pandemic that's happened, and just, you know, assisting folks in general. It's just been busy.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like, you know, on my end, I felt like my career started picking up as, you know, in the arts and creative stuff, once the pandemic started picking up, which was weird because, you know, prior to this, I felt like a lot of the things that like I'm getting paid to do now, I was doing for free, you know, just to sort of get opportunities to operate in these spaces. I would imagine like things are kind of similar for you.
So it's kind of weird because, you know, what I do is I work with people who are looking for employment. I work with business startups to get their businesses going. So it kind of didn't change as much. I mean, it did and it didn't. It's kind of weird. It's hard to explain because I have my employment side and I have my business side where I may have 12 employment. I have 5 business clients and they kind of all both measure out together. So it's kind of been ongoing with employment, with businesses, no season. So, you know, a lot of people think at the end of the year or beginning of the year, that's when things pick up for employment services, but it doesn't. It just depends on the economy, where everybody is. And I will say, because of COVID and the pandemic, people being laid off of work, people looking for other opportunities, I have been reached out to a lot for for those services.
Okay. Okay. And so you mentioned that you sort of have your employment, and then you have your business stuff. So like, what are you doing? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, so hence the long name, TRICE Occupational Consulting Solutions. So what it is I offer resources and consulting for people who are looking for some type of career, whether that be in business for themselves, whether that be employment. So I try to think of something that can encompass everything under that umbrella. So occupational consulting is kind of where it came from. So on the employment side, again, like I said, I help job seekers, people who are currently working, either get new work, new opportunity, more money, better position, or completely switch up their industries. I help a lot of folks who haven't worked in X amount of years or have a gap of employment and they're trying to get back to what they used to do. So I do a lot of that in the employment side, as well as I have a job distribution list, whereas I get jobs that come in, I send them out to my clients or to whoever needs employment. So it could be jobs from warehouse up to executive level clerical, state jobs, county jobs, anything that comes across my desk or, comes across to me, I'll send out to folks. So that there's just another way, another means or another connection they have to getting employment and job opportunities. I just started on the employment side. I work with companies who are looking to do recruiting. So if they're looking for that specific employee that has, the exact skills, can kind of fit in the office environment, has a great personality or whatever that may look like for them, I also help them with recruiting to find good employees. And then on the business side, I work with startup businesses that are already in process, in growing their business. So whatever that looks like, that could be matches their business cards, matches their website, matches all the paperwork. I do a lot of document editing, so terms and conditions, develop proposals. I do a lot of business plans for a lot of startup businesses. And those I just kind of do the simple business plans where it kind of gives you the who, what, when, where, why, how for whatever that company is.
Oh wow. So it's like so you're it sounds like you're like your job is to help sort of get people jobs, help move jobs or share jobs. You're in the business of jobs.
Yeah. Yep. Career employment. That's my big thing. I think a lot of that stemmed from, just me going through my own personal struggles on the employment side. I'm realizing that employment or steady income is needed for stability. And that is kind of like my main focus. I want to help folks become stable within whatever their skill is, what they do. Yeah. I want people to advance and grow and make more money. And my way of doing that is through employment, through, recognizing what your skills and abilities are so you can actually apply them somewhere.
Nice. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always curious when so for me, I'm an artist, right? So like when everybody says like, oh yeah, how did you get started? Well, I just started drawing, and then people at some point want to just pay me for that, right? And so and so for when I hear about other people's careers and entrepreneurial adventures that sort of go beyond sort of those trade things, like mm-hmm. I'm really curious, like how do you even get started doing this?
Well, so it's funny. So after high school, I worked administrative offices. My kind of goal, or in a sense, what I wanted to be, in a sense, was I want to be an executive admin somewhere. Just give me the money to work way up there, and I'll do a lot of the work, whatever. And that was my way of kind of like helping. I'm real big on teamwork. I'm never like the forefront person, but I'm in the back, kind of like helping things kind of move. So my thought was like an admin assistant, an executive admin somewhere in some tall building, I'll make a lot of money, whatever. And then I got into a relationship. It was a 9-year, emotionally, physically, financially, mentally abusive relationship. So in that time frame of that 8 to 9 years, the work that I was used to doing, which is the administrative work, office clerical, I ended up doing warehouse work and working with him. He was did carpentry. So I'm like on top of roofs and I'm, fixing the roof. I'm like painting, I'm knocking down walls. So I'm doing all these things that were so outside of what I went to school for, or what I was used to. So after leaving that situation, having to get back into the workforce, not wanting to apply for a warehouse job, it was really hard for me. It was hard for me to get my foot in the door anywhere because, through the physical side of the abuse, I wasn't, the front face of a company, so me doing administrative or reception work was kind of like, no, no, thank you. Or they'll look at the resume really quick and put it away. And a lot of things on my resume were, like I said, they were like 8 years old. So I really had nothing substantial to say, okay, I can be an admin, I can be your receptionist, I can do this front office duty, because it'd been so long since I've done it. And then, of course, I didn't want to put the warehouse work where I worked, 2-3 days here, or worked at a labor ready where I just go in for the day for work. So I didn't want to put any of that on the resume when I'm trying to apply for an admin or an office job. So just kind of going through the motions, trying to figure it out. I went to a staffing agency, Brooks Staffing. They were the only Black-owned staffing agency here in Portland, off of Alberta. So I went in there and I was like, I'm looking for work. I don't care what it is at this point. This is what I've done in the past. This is what I want to do. This is what I've done recently. So they actually got me a couple warehouse jobs that were like warehouse/office. So I was doing inventory. I was tearing the tin key up. I was doing all that stuff. And basically, I just kind of showed up and showed out. I did as much as I could. Then I actually went in for a job and they needed someone at the front desk there to cover the receptionist's vacation for like a week or something like that. So I was like, I'll do it. Like, I'm here. You guys know I'm a good employee, so they allowed me to do that. And of course, when I got in that position, I showed out. Like, I did everything that wasn't on my job duties list. I did everything they needed. I asked if they needed help here and there. So that just kind of built up trust with them. And then from there, they offered me a position. That person that I was filling in for, she actually quit or moved on. So I filled in that role. So I started there, becoming front office to office manager to recruiter. So that's where I got a lot of the different skills and abilities of working with different industries, knowing how to place people, understanding human resources, what that looks like, understand how it is to be a recruiter, interview preparation, assessing a resume for a specific position, working with different clients that needed employees. So that's where I learned the bulk of what I do now. I worked there for a total of like 8 years. I believe 2 of which I was an actual employee there. And then from there, went to Bradley Engel, which is a domestic violence resource center. And I was the economic empowerment coordinator. So in that program, I help domestic violence survivors maintain stability through finances. So credit, employment, entrepreneurship, just kind of working the whole gamut of, financial stability. And then from there, I really got connected with the business side, already knowing how businesses operate from working with the temp agency, and then actually connecting with the business side really kind of fused the two together. So I decided, actually, after Brooks Staffing, I had a few friends that wanted me to do a resume. I was like, sure, I'll do it for you. So I'll, do it really quick. And they got the job. And then I kept doing it for folks and just updating their resumes. And I got all the feedback like, Kenyatta, they love my resume. They got the job, So I was like, I should start charging for this thing. Like, we're doing something here. So I started charging like a little bit here and there. And from that, people were getting jobs, and then people were referring people to me. So people were like, oh, you're the resume girl. You're the one that do the resume. So I'm like, yep, that's me. I'm her, So from there, it just kind of stemmed on and it kept going, and people were inquiring about employment, and that kind of led into the business side, where working with people who have barriers to their employment, they couldn't always get employment. They couldn't just go walk to the door, turn an application. So a lot of those folks started their own businesses, utilizing the skills that they have, their abilities, and they start their own businesses. So I kind of help folks starting like, these are things you need to think about when you're planning a business. What does your finance look like? Do you think this is something you can do 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Is this something that you just want to do as a hobby?
And yeah. I mean, we could just circle back. And so, what you were saying, the last thing I heard you say was, um, that you started, um, started to charge people for your, for doing the resumes,
For the
and then you
service.
and then you started to sort of build up from there and see that, like, oh yeah, like these things have value and that like you could expand and all that. And so
Yeah. And that's pretty much what it was is after I, helped out some friends personally with their resumes and they were getting the jobs and I was getting a lot of good feedback on the resume itself from the people that hired them, it definitely made me think like, okay, maybe I do have a business, because I never seen myself as a business owner. I was like, I'll just work for somebody and I'll make money that way. Um, so I just kind of got into it. And then with the job that I had at the Domestic Violence Resource Center as the economic empowerment coordinator, that position helped out a lot because, working with folks that have barriers, they can't always go to a job that's hiring and get the job.
yeah,
So they have to use their other skills that they have and abilities to create work for themselves. And the best way to do that is through self-employment. So just really recognizing what skills people have, deciding if it's just a hobby or if it's something that they can actually use toward stability, toward making increasing their revenue and making money for themselves.
yeah, and often I think because in some ways like our stories sort of parallel each other where
Mm-hmm.
I had these interests and I sort of went down this path, but the opportunities to expand, to have my own studio and stuff like that was really just
Mm-hmm.
because I pursued some things and I saw that people were willing to pay for it and it had an impact, and it sort of
Right.
filled a void for a lot of people that just didn't have access to just these services. And
Right. Exactly.
it's just and then you start a business and you're like, oh dang, I didn't never really wanted to start a business, or that wasn't really on the radar. It's just that
At
that's just one
all.
of the things that happens, right? Like
Right.
it's it, uh and so what was the thing that like really sort of led you to like branch out on your own and like become an entrepreneur?
Um, I think the biggest thing was the need that I seen, and also just understanding where I came from and knowing how hard it was for me to access certain services, certain things that was going to actually help me support myself and my family. Just really seeing the need that people had. I am a super duper planner. Everything has to be kind of like scripted and, step 1 through 10 has to be, they have to be right. So with me already having that type of skill set, a little bit of OCD, I figure like this is a good way to really, get to people at the heart of what it is that they want to do to become an entrepreneur. I mean, even for myself, I am an entrepreneur, but I also work. I still have a 9 to 5 job. So juggling the two, it can be busy at times, but at the same time, the work that I do with my business is very rewarding because I can help someone develop or recognize what skills they have that they can use toward either employment or a business. And if it's a business, that's even better because it's more sustainable if it's done right.
Yeah, yeah, and that's one thing that like I appreciate is that like one,
Mhm.
yeah, well, yeah, you have to do taxes, you have to set up an
Yeah.
EIN, you have to do payroll and all these different things. But at the end of the day, when things are moving, like you don't have to ask permission to do things, right?
Nice.
Like it's just at the end of the day, it's just like I don't have to ask anybody nothing.
Yeah,
Which for us, like being black in Portland, right? Like there's a lot of things you
yep.
have to ask permission for,
You
and
have to.
you know,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and sometimes that could just sometimes it just doesn't sit well when you have to ask permission for certain things. Uh,
Especially for the things that seem like, do I have to ask for this?
yeah,
you know? So, yeah, I mean, that is definitely something I do love about the entrepreneurship side of life is that you can create your own schedule. You can, make time to do the things you need to do as well as continue to support your family, So I like it because it gives you a lot of different variations of what life is and what it can be versus being stuck kind of like in a 9 to 5 box.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not saying that I'm stuck in a box.
Yeah.
Because I do work, but I will say with the work that I do, I'm very intentional about the employment that I do get. Right now I'm working at OAMI as the loan officer pretty much for the organization, the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs. So I also work with businesses and business owners that want to work with minority-owned businesses too. So I get a huge heap load of resources there that I can also give out to clients as I go through. So
nice. So you're all sort of branching out and taking that sort of core element and mission that you have, and then just through a variety of collaborations and a variety of different avenues, you're sort of seeing manifesting that into the world.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good word to use, a collaboration, versus me saying, I have a 9 to 5 job. It's more of a collaboration because a lot of the information that I get from my job, I definitely utilize it and use it towards my clients and my business, and also for employment. So it's a win-win working there.
Yeah. And I think, and this is one of the things that like I joke around with my girlfriend about. It's that like I was a freelancer. And so essentially a freelancer is just somebody that does stuff for money. And so they don't necessarily have a job. They just do stuff.
Contract work.
They just do contract work, essentially. And so like her parents are very traditional. So like for most of our relationship, they just thought that she went to work and I just stayed at home and just like, did stuff on my computer.
You're like, no, I do stuff. I work.
And so it's been a very interesting. It's seeing how like relevant my work is like during COVID, or at least over the past year. It's been interesting to see the stark shift in their perception. Even though I technically have not changed what I've done on a day-to-day basis, and so it's just times change and people sort of have a greater awareness of that at their own pace, I suppose.
Yeah. That adjustment, it happens. It's necessary. It's just, what is the adjustment going to be? And if it's just adjusting our thought processes and how we view things or see things, it's going to adjust at some point. Yeah. It's just a matter of when and what.
Yeah, definitely. And so like, so you're from Portland, right? Are you from Portland?
Born and raised. Yep.
Nice. Have you been out?
Yep, from Portland, born and raised.
Like, have you left Portland? Like, did you sort of like go off and then come back, or have you just sort of just been based in Portland, just, rooted?
I'm here. I'm just rooted and grounded. I am here. A lot of that stemmed from, the relationship that I was in. It was pretty much after high school, a couple years out of high school. So I'm here.
Yeah. And so how have you seen like Portland change, since there's Nike sort of picked up, Intel always has people coming through, every 5 people works at White and Kennedy, like how,
no, really,
how have you seen like the changes happen in Portland, particularly over the past, 5-10 years?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So over the last 5-10 years in employment as well as business, it has changed a lot. Over the last year, it has really, it's really changed a lot too. But over the last 5 years, for employment, actually, even now, employment is always competitive. It's always competitive no matter where you go. But a big thing that I discuss, I talk about, I try to teach folks is how we represent ourselves. How we're represented on paper. Because on paper, no matter who is behind that employer's desk in the HR, they're humans and they're people too, and they have their own thoughts and their own processes and their own sometimes judgments. So we have to make sure we stand out on paper to where it's going to be received by any and everybody, So really seeing that change a little bit to where people are, maybe the folks behind the human resources desk, they're being more open to the types of resumes that they get. not just wanting to see something specific, but really looking at it and saying, hey, I think this person could work out. Let's give them a go. I'm definitely seeing a lot of the social services side, which I like to call the human side of people. I'm starting to see that stand out a lot as far as what employers are looking for. There's this term, looking for that perfect fit or that perfect fit for the environment, and I hate that term because it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What is that? And basically it's just, to me, it's recognizing and being able to say, okay, this person is human. They have a heart. They care. They have thoughts. They have feelings. It's not just so structured to, these are the duties. I come in at 8, start here, and I end here each time. So I think it's really, I think a lot of employers are starting to just be a little more lax on what they see as a requirement or a need for an employee. And then on the business side of sorry, truck behind me. So and then on the business side, I mean, just because everything has been happening with, understanding racial equity, especially here in Portland, I think a lot of people are being more open and being more trusting to the different businesses and ideas that people have. So I don't know, it just feels like it's a lot more welcoming over the past 5 years than it was prior to.
Interesting. Yeah, because I feel like just across the board, the need for particularly Black people to sort of assimilate it as I talked to like my parents and my grandparents, like that, it was sort of a stark contrast of like what you could do on the weekend versus what you do, to show up at work. And I'm starting to see like, as the generations go on, that like it becomes a lot more relaxed in a variety of areas,
Right.
Hairstyles, right? Like, just the way you talk, even your name, like those things on paper aren't red flags as much as they would often be.
Yeah, they were red flags a lot. I mean, especially when you're looking at employment. I went to this. It was interesting. I went to this conference, and it was a conference with, it had to be over 400 or 500 employers, human resources, recruiters, and it was kind of cool because they were taking a poll as to what are the first things they look for. And it was unbelievable that they did not have someone there with a DEI background because I was like, is this how we are looking for employees? This is not good at all, just a simple thing of like putting your address on the resume. Although when you do apply for jobs, you do need to state your address on the application, but in resumes, typically that's the first thing employers look for. So let's say I live in Southeast Portland and the job is in Beaverton. Well, because the address on my resume is Southeast Portland, they're going to think, oh, this person's not going to be able to make it to work on time. Or they'll be like, oh, that's a terrible neighborhood, so let's not have them work here, or even vice versa, So a lot of discrimination happens just by the first glance at the resume. Of course, we know the names. A lot of African-American names are, they're very unique and they're not always pronounced right by people. So that can also be a thing that can stop people from employment just by the look of the resume. So I definitely work with a lot of people on just what that could mean, depending on where they're applying to, making sure they have the correct skills and abilities in the resumes to make them an actual candidate to get their foot in the door.
Yeah. And man, this brings me back to all those, trying to hop on the job market and being like, dang, man, this sucks. Yeah. like you try to dot your I's, cross your T's and everything. And
right. And it's crazy. I had this position that I applied for. It was like doing the credit card processing for medical facilities. And I applied for the job. I'm like, oh, I can get this job hands down. Like, I got this. I applied for it. They told me no. I applied for like 3 or 4 times. And I'm going to say the last time I applied, I changed the name on my resume. Instead of Kenyatta, which it's hard to pronounce for folks sometimes, I put K. And I got the interview. And not only did I get the interview, and I sat in there and I was talking to I believe it was the department manager about it, and she was new. And she just looked at my resume and she's like, I feel like we've seen this resume before. Have you applied here before? So I kind of laughed to myself like, yeah, I applied a few times. And she's like, oh, this is the first time. She said, because you have great skills, like you're a good match. And in my mind, I'm like, I know, that's why I applied, and it was just amazing that she was like, I know I've seen this before. And as she read through my past employer, she's like, no, wait, I did see this resume. Why wasn't it selected? And I mean, it got to a point where this was the longest interview I've had where she took a break. She had to go investigate because she knows she's seen it. And I think they were really trying to hire for this position, and they just weren't doing a good job at hiring, apparently.
Yeah.
So she came back, and when I think she thought about it and realized why I did not get the job, she apologized. And she's like, I'm so sorry. This is not okay. We have to do something different in this department. So they created a committee and all that good stuff after the fact. But just those things, you never really know what people are looking at when they see that resume or see that document. It can be someone who's totally qualified, can really make this company grow. But because of maybe their name or where they live or even how they formatted their resume, people overlook the actual skills that are there for that person. It's just a piece of paper to some people, but it's actually this is a person that's representing themselves on paper to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, man, this is that. That's a story that I would imagine any Black person going into the workforce has had, and not even that, so I just got into medical school, a couple weeks ago. And so it's, and I had a very similar story where, during my, they pretty much, medical school is sort of the quintessential example of you got to fit in this box in order to get through the process, right? And so there's been this push for medical schools to look more holistically at applicants, but really that holistic stuff really is just okay, you need to make sure you have high grades, you need to make sure that you have high test scores, and then maybe maybe you have a hobby, right? It's
right.
Or maybe you saved a baby from a burning building, right? It's this outlandish thing, right? And so I got rejected from a school, and then I did a feedback session, and it just so happened that I did the feedback session with the director of admissions, and she looked at my resume and she was like, "Oh, you're doing this, and this, and you got rejected. I think you should apply and mind you, I had the feedback session in June, and applications were due in June, or they opened up applications in June. So she was like, I want you to apply next month, and then let's see how it goes. So I didn't change nothing on my application,
right?
But I just had that conversation, was on the radar, and I essentially just improved on it, I suppose, just changed words differently, right? Marketed myself a little bit better, and then I get admitted into the school, so that was one of the schools that admitted me into it, and it was just this is what happens to this is this is part of the Black experience, right? Navigating these structures and institutions, just to, even if you're already qualified, right?
Yeah, it kind of doesn't matter. And that's the part that was amazing to me, because I think for me, I kind of just drew a blind eye, to it. And it's oh, they say this happens, I've never experienced it. So, I can't say. But when I went to that, and mind you, I was in my 20s. So, that says a lot about what was being taught to me too. But when I went to that, and I was just are they serious? Is this how they pick people? This is real life, and then everything just started kind of becoming real to me. I really opened up my eyes, and I was like, wow. And even working at the staffing agency, I had a lady come in, and, it's kind of snooty patooty when she came in. I'm at the front desk, and we send everybody through the same testing. We give them the test, the manual test on paper, where it teaches you, how to alphabetize, how to do your basic math, And she came in with her resume. She has a master's degree and some more education. So I have to send her through the process like we do everyone. So I let her know, here's the testing that you need to do online. Here's the manual testing. Once this is done, we'll get you scheduled for your interview. And she was like, well, no, I have a master's, I don't do these things. So I just kind of explained, I'm sorry, but we have to, give this to everyone that comes in. So she kind of huffed and puffed and she went through the process. And it was interesting because when she brought the paperwork back up to me and I'm correcting it, she didn't do pretty good at all. Like she did bad. So in that experience, it was just like, she was making me feel kind of inferior. How she was kind of like, no, I don't do this. And, like, you're just the receptionist. And it was also funny because I was also the recruiter. I just happened to be at the front desk. So when I walked her to the back room for interviewing, she was rude. And she's like, thank you, and she said it in a very rude way. And when she sat down and I closed the door behind me and I sit down with her, she kind of just looks. And she's like, oh, who's interviewing me? I was like, well, I'm the interviewer. I'm a recruiter as well. And then she, like, her whole atmosphere changed. And it was even like when I asked her, can you elaborate on this? What does this mean? That she had written on her resume, which is fine, it was a skill, but elaborate it for me. Explain to me what was your process. And for her to sit there and not be able to really explain it, it showed me, one, I was like, okay, it doesn't matter where your education level is.
Yeah.
At all. It matters what you know, how you perceive it, how you explain it. And she did a terrible job. And part of me was like, look at that. She come in, snort her nose at me, and she did a terrible job on the test and the interview. And it's like, and it's funny because even with that, being professional, I couldn't even recommend her to the job because she couldn't even explain to me how she did these processes that would match well with the position. But if you can't explain it to me here, how do I know you're going to do it at work? And so it was interesting.
Yeah.
And I've gotten a lot of those type of stories where, people are kind of under the assumption based on how they see you or assuming based on what they read initially. They're already making this complete determination of who you are as a person and whether you can qualify for something or not. So I definitely like to work with people on both sides of that, what that can look like on both sides. Make sure you're representing yourself and make sure you can explain the things that you know how to do,
Yeah. Hey, I mean, but like, this is the type of stuff that stops people from, getting opportunities. And this is also the type of stuff that, like, people have been using to get over on people, right? Like, you got somebody off the street that's a little shifty or whatever, just hasn't worked for all the things that, like, they have. And then they're the CEO of a company and doesn't know how to file their taxes or whatever. Like, it's just interesting sort of seeing how the world works in many ways. But, I definitely commend you on just, putting your hard hat on and doing the work. Because, this is the stuff that we all, like, us as sort of like people of color, specifically Black people, like, this is the stuff that, like, we get to, we don't have to worry about in the future because people like you are doing the work to make it better for everyone. And
these are things that, they didn't teach us this in school. We didn't have this information in school at all, and the things that they did teach us in school about life, it doesn't really apply. So it's like, who is out there being real with people about what their skills, what their abilities, what they can actually do with them. So yeah, I definitely like to talk to people about, like, what it is, what is your motives, like, what moves you, what is your passion? Because a lot of people's passions can definitely determine what type of work they're willing to do, what type of work they want to do, and what type of business they want to create.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, I just think about all just the negative experiences that I've had just as an adult, and how I had an interest in it until I had that experience, and then I was like, I don't want to deal with that anymore, right?
Same.
And I just think about, like, how would my life be different if I would have just pursued that interest and just not had that bad experience.
And sometimes we have to have those experiences. You have to have those experiences so that we can grow within ourselves. So sometimes I even ask myself, well, dang, if I would have done this before, I would have been, like, super great now. But without without all that I've been through, I wouldn't be where I am now. So it's like I kind of needed those experiences and that bad experience or that bad time in my life, or that situation in order to be who I am today, and also know how to handle situations that may be the same or may arise. So it's definitely everything we do is for a reason.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or dislike it, it's for a reason. It's for a placement somewhere in our lives going forward, whether you use it or you use it to say, I know I'm not going to do that again. Either way, we can always learn from whatever we go through, for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, hey, it's been great chatting with you. I really appreciate it. Definitely learned a lot. It was great to have these. I always love these doing this podcast because it's a way for me to learn about other people's experiences and then unintentionally find how those experiences parallel some of the experiences that I have. And
absolutely,
and I think that just makes the connection even better because you get to have a level of solidarity that goes beyond just it's personal, right? Like
exactly, yeah.
And
it's like we're all so different, but we're all so much alike in so many different ways. And just like learning that is very intriguing.
Oh yeah, and so what the one question that I always like to ask people is, being Black in Portland and you being in Portland and being homegrown in Portland, what is the Blackest thing you've done in Portland?
Oh, goodness. What is the Blackest thing I've done in Portland? Oh, my God. Oh, this is a really good question. What is the Blackest thing I've done in Portland? You really gonna have me thinking about this one. I gotta think about it for myself now. What is the Blackest thing I've done in Portland? I don't know. That's crazy. Why don't I know?
I don't know. Why don't you know? You're Black in Portland. What's going on?
I know. I got firsthand experience. What is the Blackest thing I've done in Portland? Oh my goodness.
We gotta have something.
I know. There's gotta be something. Why can't I think? I don't know if I'm trying to outdo myself. Or what? What's the Blackest thing I've done in Portland? Stephen, I'm really I am mad at myself right now. Because I can't think of anything that would be like the Blackest thing that I've done in Portland.
I guess let me. What is the thing that is unique? What is the experience? What is an experience that you would not have if you were a white person?
Well, I think so. With that, the business that I have, I don't think I would have it to the extent that I have, where I can touch a lot of us and teach us about things that were not taught in schools, or just, the things that are just kind of on the surface that we just don't see. And a lot of that is based on how we have been treated over the years by other folks, and just how we as Black people have to kind of get by. So being able to teach, talk about the little tips and tricks that we have to do, or that we do or can do to kind of get in where we fit in or advance, I think that's a plus for me.
Okay. We'll make that work. We're gonna
have to. I'm still stuck on that. What's the Blackest thing? Lord, I don't know.
I think that's something to marinate on.
It is.
That is something to marinate on.
You have got me, because I don't get got a lot. You got me.
It's such a simple question, right? Like it
should be.
It's such a simple question, but the answer is, I think, if you look back at all the episodes of this podcast, like you'll get such of like there's no one answer that's the same. Like it
Okay.
is the
Well, I don't even have one answer, so I definitely need
broadest.
to go back.
Yeah, it's the broadest thing. And
What's the blackest thing you've done
the black
in Portland as a black man?
That is as I'm starting to think about it now, huh? So
No one's ever asked you?
no, no. The thing is, I wasn't prepared. The first time I started asking this, I wasn't prepared for people to ask that back to me. That's all. I was like, crap, you know. But the blackest thing I did is one of my friends has a penthouse in south on the southwest waterfront, and so we had a young professionals group, it's all black like professionals group of friends that every weekend, like literally every weekend of like summer 2015. It was like summer 2015 or 2016. We would have these just like these crazy parties with like, you know, executive like and all of us were like doctors and you know, anesthesiology residents and, you know, business owners and just black people, right? And so we would have these elaborate like summer parties and stuff. And then we would all like go to our like, you know, like jobs of owning businesses and going to hospitals and stuff like that. And so just like being around all that, just all that blackness and us being ourselves, but also just like living it up in a penthouse every single weekend.
Yeah.
You know, like that's something that like I felt that's not something you would find going to Portland.
It's not common.
It's something you would think going to Atlanta or someplace like that. And so for me, it was just like, I think the first thing that I thought, you know, because like us as black people, we'd be like, something's off. Something like this is, you know, I started thinking like, I don't know if some of these people got jobs. I don't know if they got responsibilities because we over here living it up and you know, and come to find out, you know, like not only do they have a job, but they employ people. And it was just like, what in the world? Like, it I think, you know, and I think that moment, it really sort of made me reflect on like, what does successful black people look like? What does successful blackness look like? You know? And that I think that moment really like sticks with me because it forced me to reflect on just like that idea, right? And so and so I always say that that's my like blackest moment in Portland because it allowed me to see firsthand what black excellence looked like around me.
Right. That makes sense. And from your example, I still don't know. I'm going to be thinking about this. I'm going to like email you randomly one night. I'm like, I got it. This is it.
Yes, definitely do that. I think that'll be something that we could. I think for me, one of the purposes of this podcast is to one, tell stories of people, just black people that are just doing things around Portland. Because I feel like that they're just, when I started doing this, there just wasn't that, especially in podcasts. But then more importantly, sort of literally just like being able to define what black success looks like, right? Like movers and shakers, entrepreneurs, community builders. You know, you can't just type on the internet, who's black people doing stuff in Portland? You can't just type on the internet and do that. And so
it's not the same.
You know, so but you could do that for other people though. You know, you could do that for other communities. And so, you know, for Portland specifically, I was just like, you know, this is what I do. This is what I want to see. And, you know, nothing to it but to just hit some people up and just have conversations.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it for sure. I definitely appreciate it.
Oh yeah. Glad you do. And so with that, let that story marinate, you know, ponder
it's super marinating.
And when you can, just get back to me with an answer. And I'm super curious to see what that will be. to be honest with you.
Me too. Because then it made me think like, well, dang, what have I? I mean, besides the obvious, helping my folks out, but like, what is the blackest thing I've done here?
Yeah. And so before we go, do you have any links to drop? Any sort of things where people can find you? Any of that?
Yeah. So I can be found on Facebook under TRICE Occupational Consulting Solutions, a long name, or you can find me under my name, Kenyatta Trice. I can also be found on Instagram under TRICE OCS, as well as Twitter, Trice_LLC.
Okay.
Oh, and the website, www.triceocs.com.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, so we will definitely have that available on the website for anyone that wants to check it out and doesn't want to go through the laborious task of typing in the characters on the search bar.
Right.
But really appreciate the time. Really appreciate you dropping some knowledge for us and sharing your story and everything. And look forward to hopefully connecting with you at some point when COVID ends and stuff. And
right, definitely.
Going from there.
Yep. Until next time.
Again, wear your mask, be safe, and
yes, absolutely.
Yep. Just keep doing all the great work that you're doing. It's I know.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate it.
I know many of people that really appreciate just feeling less restrictive at work.
And that's what it shouldn't be that hard. It shouldn't be as hard as it is presented to us.
Yeah.
So definitely learning different ways around it and maneuvering through, I think is important.
Oh yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. And so with that, we'll just call it a wrap. Black Rose PDX podcast is recorded at the Seoul District Business Association office in collaboration with Flossin Media. We are located off of Northeast Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Portland, Oregon. This podcast is recorded, mixed, and mastered by Stephen Christian. Background music is provided by Spring Gang at Epidemic Sound. Follow us on all social media platforms at PDX Black Rose. PDX BLACKROSE. Give us a rate and review on your favorite podcast platform like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. Click the subscribe button to get notified about new episodes. And make sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. Thank you.